Hey everyone, welcome to the Canine Culture Podcast, where we talk about everything dog. Q&As with veterinarian professionals, rescue operators, everyday topics. We cover everything dog on this podcast. So make sure you subscribe to the Canine Culture Podcast on your favorite podcast platform, and make sure you're following us on social media on both Instagram and Facebook. Thanks again for listening. Now here's that next episode. Hey everyone, welcome to the Canine Culture Podcast. This is your host, Brittany, and today we are joined by Fiona out of New Zealand. She is the CEO of Newflands, and I know I am ruining the pronunciation. She's going to fix it with her accent. So Fiona, thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. It's amazing to be here. It's a very exciting opportunity for me. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to discussing and giving people an opportunity to learn a little bit more about New Zealand and how we sit in the world of the animal industry and what it is that we can offer from our perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. For anyone listening, it took us some while to coordinate this because we're 18-hour time difference. And so her nights are my mornings are her nights. I would be in bed while she's getting up for work. And so happy we could figure this out. And so let's just start with who you are and what you do. And I know you do a lot. And so people are going to be able to see that from your website. But let's talk about the online store, the dog park. Let's talk about everything you do.
Okay, where do I start? I started many years ago as a vet nurse and got a huge amount of knowledge from that and just my natural love for animals as a child growing up. And then when I had my own dog in my own house, it was just, we were in town and there was nowhere that I really could comfortably walk my dogs and wanted to be safe without anybody coming and harassing me or my dogs harassing anybody else. So we looked to move outside. Plus, I wanted another horse. So we came out here about 30 odd years ago and we brought our first Newfoundland with us. So that was Dancer. And then we bred her after we'd done health testing on her. I had a litter, and over the years we had quite a few dogs, a few litters, and my knowledge grew. And because of it, I found one of my dogs had a terminal heart condition, and I said to the vet, who happened to be a guy that I went to university with, and said to him, what can I do to improve the quality of life? Because I know that's terminal, I know what the condition is. And they said, well, you can try some fish oil. So New Zealand is surrounded by water. If anybody's actually looked at New Zealand on a map, if you found a map with New Zealand on it, you're lucky.
Yeah.
It's surrounded by water, and we've got a huge, wonderful, wonderful seafood fishing industry that is amazing, very sustainable, and just willing to do the best it can for the environment. And so I went, well, we should have fish oil. Couldn't find anything anywhere. So I brought one to market. Took a bit of doing, but we got it there. And my ethos was, from the start, was it had to be sustainable. It had to be environmentally, acceptable. And it had to be a fish oil that did the job it should have done. And from there, the brand grew. And we started off with our most well-known product, which is our Newfoundland's Hokey oil. And then we've grown from there, and we've added in the astaxanthin, which is a marine algal oil. We're the first in the world to have done that, and we got acknowledged for that up in Kansas. And then we've added in a range of treats, because being sustainable, we wanted to use the whole fish when we're fishing. So we use the whole fish. What we don't use in the treats or the oil, we have turned into a gravy. And then from there, we just sort of grew, because people would come to me and say, oh, my dog's got this problem. Can you help me solve it with one of your products? And so we've added in health treats, and we've added in other bits and pieces. And now we've just launched our pet wipes out of bamboo, and we're just waiting on sign off for our pet spray. So it's been a whole range of things. And one of the reasons we're doing sort of the more away from food products as well is that we've got the dog park, which we run by donation, and I teach people how to teach dogs to swim. So yeah, so that's it's grown from there. And then because we've had people coming, and I've always boarded my own puppies and my own other people's dogs, we've got a small kennels. We turned an old gardening shed that was turning into a bit of a jungle into a cattery. So we've got a small communal cattery on site as well, and a small shop. And yeah, we have the online shop as well. So yeah, there's quite a few fingers and pies there.
Yeah. Yeah, you're doing a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
So for those products, those can be shipped internationally?
Yeah, right from the start, I was like, I want to be able to help more than just my animals. It's got to be global. And I've got family around the globe, I've got friends around the globe. So I wanted to make sure that anything we did in any of the factories we worked in, that it was acceptable to go offshore. And that's what we've done. Every factory we work with is offshore ready and offshore capable. And yeah, the other factories that have done stuff for me that have been under trial phases. So
Hmm.
yeah, everything we do, we can export.
And then
Not a problem.
the new pet wipes that you did, I saw those,
Yeah.
the bamboo pet wipes. So what exactly are those good for? What are you guys using those for?
Okay, so the pet wipes, uh, in New Zealand we get very humid, and I notice in Asia as well because of the high level of moisture in the air. So we've got a high yeast count. Um, the design behind that is to clean between the toes, the pads, underneath the eyes, inside the ear flaps, and just dirty drool. And I've got dogs who slobber, and people
Hmm.
aren't always keen on that. So cleaning that mess around, but making sure that you're not adding in, bacteria and yeast that can cause skin issues and hot spots and things like that. So that was the thinking behind that. We've trialled it over the last Christmas with dogs in our kennels that have had earache and stuff, and because we're not shoving right down into the ear, the ear, the top ear is cleaned, but
Hmm.
that hasn't got quite down. So we've always had to have the antibiotics to back up where we can't reach, because you don't want to put your finger right down to a dog's ear. It can do
Yeah.
damage. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And those sound kind of like a good option for the dogs that
yeah,
have all the folds in their face.
definitely, yeah,
Frenchies, bulldogs. I know they get
yeah,
like those deep, like yeast infections. And
yeah,
I don't know of many good white products that you can get. Like a lot of them, the first ingredients, alcohol or water. So some of them are either ineffective or they're just so harsh and drying. So
yeah.
that's a cool product that you guys made, the bamboo.
Thank you. I had a client in here yesterday, and she's going. I said, because I give them a free wipe to try them out, and she's saying to me, "Oh, have you had the other wipes?" And I go, "No." And she goes, "Oh, these are so soft and so good and so nice." So I was like, "Hey, she's coming back today. Who knows?"
Yeah.
Yeah, our first iteration of the photos that we've got on the website, that the labels aren't quite the quality. So we're just
Uh-huh.
working with a company at the moment to improve the labeling. So
Right.
yeah, and then we'll improve the photo quality. But when you do a product, you want to get it out and you want to help animals as quickly and as quickly as possible, and
Hmm.
get people and because you yourself as an owner, you want to do the best for your animal as soon as possible. So yeah.
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 So one of the things that was interesting to me or eye-catching to me on your website was international pet travel and how you guys can help with that. And so that's where we're going to turn to. Um, I think for a lot of Americans, I don't want to speak for everyone. However, a lot of us don't know a lot about international pet travel. We're afraid to do it. A lot of people don't know certain countries you have to quarantine. Many countries you need paperwork because when you fly domestically within the United States from state to state, there really aren't too many requirements. I mean, you pay. So if your dog's under a certain size, they can go under the seat in front of you, like a kind of like a backpack. Or if they're over a certain size, they go down in cargo. And I don't know if you guys experience this, but flying cargo in America is usually not great for pets. It's usually not very temperature controlled. There's really no thought around putting those dogs in cargo. They're treated like luggage. So, and I wonder if it's different for you guys. So, tell us a little bit about how you guys assist in international pet travel. Tell us kind of what's your kind of role whenever someone comes to you for international pet travel. And I know before we jumped on, you talked a little bit about it. So let everyone kind of know what that looks like.
Yeah, so there's another pie I forgot to talk about. I'm glad you brought it up. Um, yeah, so I'm involved in helping the owner get their animal prepared for exiting the country. I don't have a lot to do with importing animals. I have helped in the past to try and get people in touch with quarantine facilities, because often it's better to be in touch directly with a quarantine facility, so you're getting the latest information from the import team, and they're knowing, you're knowing exactly what's required. Quarantine in New Zealand, if you bring your animal into New Zealand, can last anywhere from 10 days to 30 days, depending on what country they've come into. Some countries, you can't bring your dogs back to New Zealand directly. You've actually got to go to a third country and stay in that country for 6 months before they can come into New Zealand. So you need to really check that out first. With the US is fairly easy. It's generally, and this is me saying without the latest knowledge, about 10 days. There are vaccines you need to have done. I would have to double check around the titer testing for the rabies vaccine. But yeah, that's why I put people onto the quarantine facilities. They've got the up-to-date information, and I don't want to say anything incorrectly. When it comes to exporting, though, New Zealand's one of the safest places to export. So if your dog's been here in New Zealand for more than 190 days, and it's come from another country, or it's been born in New Zealand, it generally can go directly into the country that you're travelling to, because we're such a rigid country when it comes to all our testing, not just for pets, but food and everything as well. So we're very fortunate that we've got a very clean colony of birds and fowl and so forth. The unfortunate thing is that not every country will accept them.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we're fortunate in that respect. Our diseases are minimal compared to other countries. We haven't yet had a case of foot and mouth disease in New Zealand.
Oh,
Not
wow.
saying that won't happen, but
Right.
it's something that we've been very, very, our biosecurity is pretty strict,
Mm-hmm.
and that's pretty good because of it. So yeah, and if we were to have it, it would be pretty devastating. It would basically cut New Zealand in two because of the water line. There would be lots of issues. It would have such a huge flow-on effect within New Zealand if we did have foot and mouth. So we want to do everything we can to prevent that from occurring in New Zealand, and to really make sure that everything is safe, because it doesn't just affect the animal.
You said for import, normally it's at least 10 days. So if I was
Yeah.
coming to visit for 7 or 8 days, how would that work? Would I be able to?
No, not at all. So you'd leave your pet at home. So if you're coming for anything less than 190 days, I would recommend you keep your pet at home and find someone to foster or care for your pet, or a staycation place that'll look after them. It's nicer on them because of the distance they're traveling, and it's also the paperwork that you have to go through, the things you've got to do. Your day of being in New Zealand doesn't count until you actually leave or exit quarantine. So you've got that period of time on top, which is why I say at least 190 days. And then there's the blood works that have to be sent off, and make sure that they're not there's not an issue with blood that could be done that may be required from another country. If you're going into Australia and you come from another country, you have to do a Leishman's test before you can enter Australia. If you've been in quarantine in New Zealand, you have to have been out of quarantine for over 190 days, 80 days, sorry, before you enter Australia. So
Oh, wow.
there's a bit to it.
Yeah.
If you're just coming for a holiday, just come for a holiday, give your animals a break and let them have a holiday, you have a holiday, and then go back and
Right.
you'll both be refreshed to see each other.
Yeah.
If you're coming to live, come and get yourself set up first. Come and see if it's really a place you want to be, because it's a distance. There's a lot involved in moving. It's very stressful. And it creates quite a bit of stress. And then if you're comfortable doing it, then bring your pets over. Make sure that it is going to be your long-term place, because no one wants to give their pets up.
Right.
Yeah. And by all means, don't leave your pets behind. Pets are welcome in New Zealand. We're probably not as dog-friendly a society as perhaps overseas. You don't see as many places where you can go walking and camping and tramping as you would in the US or in the UK. It's just the society as we live, because there's a lot of animals that are raised for income. So there's a lot of farms, there's a lot of grass-fed animals. So walking across a farmland or a farmer's place with your dogs is not acceptable in New Zealand. It's not
Oh,
allowed.
wow.
It's private
Okay.
property. And the same with our bushes and our reserves. You can only go to dog areas which are stipulated by the local councils that you're allowed to take them. everywhere your dog needs to be on a leash, unless it specifically states that it's got to be off leash. So that's why I say come and experience New Zealand first before you make that decision. Yeah, if you're an animal lover, you know, we're not welcoming you. We love you. We want you with
Right.
open arms. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But there are, probably because of our biosecurity concerns, there are probably a few more sort of barriers to entry in New Zealand than there are in other countries.
Mm-hmm. And you guys also help if someone wanted to charter their pets. So rather than fly domestic, or I guess you wouldn't call it domestic, but if you don't want to fly on, you know, a commercial flight like Delta or Southwest. So how does some of those charters look, or what does someone do to start chartering, and how expensive is it? Because it's got to be expensive, right?
Yeah, it is expensive. It's a luxury. So you don't want to be you don't want to think that you can charter a flight and get the same price as a cheap flexi ticket that you bought from a Christmas deal. That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
You know, a cheap place for one pet and one person on just the seat alone on a charter flight would be $35,000 US. That would be a cheap one stage ticket. So when you're thinking charter, you really need to think, you know, you're looking luxury, you're looking at high end. But if you have a brachycephalic breed and you're looking to travel long distance, that's what you need to look at. So that's another reason why I say be careful if you're coming with your dog and they're brachycephalic, because you can only go in cargo up to 5 hours out of New Zealand, and that is only if they pass the BOAS test, which is a breathing test for brachycephalic breeds, which is done by your local vet in New Zealand. So you need to be very aware of what's happening for yourself. Brachycephalic breeds, giant breeds, sometimes it works out, believe it or not, more cost effective to go business class with yourself and your family and your dog or cat, dog and cat, depending on how many animals you have, charter, and less stress. So when we do a charter flight, we arrange all of the medical for the dogs. We work with you to get you onto the actual charter flight, and generally speaking, things are sort of quicker in that you're not having the same load-in time. So if you're going cargo, your animal has to be anywhere from 3 to 4 hours, depending on the airline, sort of presented to the airline 3 to 4 hours prior to the flight taking off. With charter, you're with your pet the whole way through. So you walk into the terminal, you're with your animal, you hop on the plane with your animal. They do need to be crated from the terminal through to the actual plane, but that's not an issue. That's just partly for their own safety, because you're going straight onto a runway and there's planes and there's lots of danger and anxiety that can occur. So all animals, that's dogs and cats, have to be crated from the charter terminal through to the plane. And then once they're on the plane, they're out of the crate, and it's not a problem at all. Yeah.
And you talked about medical. I'm sorry, Titan's going to talk too. So we don't actually do that much medical testing here. When I think about, more often than not, I mean, I could take a 5-hour flight with a Frenchie or a bulldog without any kind of breathing test. And so it's almost alarming for me to hear that we can just do that and take that risk, but you guys are really taking that extra step to make sure that that dog is going to indeed be safe. I mean, it makes sense. For anyone listening to this, if you're in the US, I don't know if we offer those kind of tests at our vet. It sounds like something we should do for those dogs that could have more issues breathing. And then, it sounds like also you guys are much more stringent with respect to proving vaccinations and blood work, because here I can fly from Florida to New York. And they say your dog should be vaccinated, but I'll be honest, they've never checked. So even if they checked, I think max, they maybe check rabies. And you guys have more requirements, right?
Definitely. So although we don't have rabies in New Zealand, if we're going into a country that's requiring rabies vaccination, we will enable the vets in New Zealand to give that rabies vaccination to the pet prior to them leaving the country. And then we have to supply the government of vets. So when you're prepping an animal for export, you often have to go and visit your local vets to make sure your vaccinations are up to date. Your local vet then has to verify and sign and date the fact that that microchip and that vaccination was given. The chip was checked prior to the vaccination being given, because all our animals have to be microchipped in New Zealand.
Oh, okay.
So we do that, and then the government vet will sign off on the export certificate. So you won't get the export certificate for any country except Australia from New Zealand.
Okay.
So, for example, going into the US, you won't get that until you've been to the government vet. And the government vet will check to see if your crate fits under the IATA regulations, and they will check to make sure that the vets have given you the correct vaccinations and the worming tablets. And it's our job to help you through that process to make sure that we understand what vaccinations you need. And if we don't know, we go back to the government vet and we say, hey, can you check this, make sure it's okay? Is this animal okay to go into this country?
Mm-hmm.
And that happens on a regular basis. I've constantly checking with MPI, our government vets, is this correct? Is that correct? What's happening with this? What's happening with that? So, yeah.
That's awesome that you guys provide that kind of guidance, because just other countries that don't have it, that's something we just wouldn't even think about, so that's amazing.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and the other thing to bear in mind is that when you leave New Zealand, virtually no airline will allow you to have an animal in cabin. No commercial airline. They will have to be cargo.
Oh, really?
For charter flights. Yep.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And do you know, for those flights that are cargo, do they regulate the temperature? Do you know, if the dogs are treated any different than the luggage?
Yeah, so our understanding is that there is a pressurization and a temperature control, particularly the long hauls. So for the likes of Emirates and Qatar that are heading over to Doha or Dubai, definitely that's in place. And hence the extra expense, because they've implemented that into the cargo part.
Mm-hmm.
And the same goes for Air New Zealand, Air Canada, because they're travelling live animals. They have to, by our standards and regulations, have those in place.
Okay.
What they can't do is prevent turbulence. No one can prevent turbulence.
Right.
So, things can happen as much as you love animals and you want the best for them. They're in a plastic container. It drops 10,000 feet. Suddenly your animal, is going to feel that. So there are things that aren't perfect, but that could happen in a charter flight as well. It's just that you would be in the cabin with them.
Right.
So you'd be able to reassure them. So, it's hard because, there are things that are beyond everybody's control.
Yeah.
One more tip. If you are traveling with your dogs in cargo, please make sure, no matter what time of year, that you freeze their water, so their water slowly defrosts over the period of time, so they've got water available to them the whole trip. Yeah,
that's smart. I don't think people even think about putting water in there to begin with. So,
oh wow, okay.
I know. But yes, that's a good tip. Yeah. So if people want to find you guys, whether they want to look at your supplements, whether they are thinking about moving there, or maybe they live there and they're moving back, tell everyone where they can find you online.
So our website is newflands.co.nz. So Newflands spelt with without the OUND of Newfoundland's dogs, because the Newfie's the breed of dog that I've bred first. So yeah.
Well, we appreciate all of the information. Love hearing from you guys over in New Zealand, and just appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for tuning in to the Canine Culture Podcast. Please make sure you subscribe to the Canine Culture Podcast on your favorite podcast platform, and make sure you're following us on social media. If you have any recommendations, any topics that you'd like to hear, if you know of any guests that would be good for the show, or if you yourself want to be a guest, please reach out to us. Send us an email at canineculturepodcast@gmail.com, or send us a direct message on social media. Thank you for listening, and please share this with any of your dog-loving friends.